And welcome back to this Tuesday edition of the Hagman Report. We're going to be joined by Tracy Beanz momentarily, but before we do, just a quick message or rant, if you will. I don't know how many people out there are going through stuff in their lives that it seems like every day something new, another problem, another issue. It's a constant battle. You're fighting every second of every day, it seems like. And, that's what that goes on here with us. And you get a lot of emails we read and people who call us and say, hey, we're going through this, we're going through that. And whether it's little things like having to get your car fixed or other serious life changes, you just got to continue to push through. And it is so important not to be bogged down or depressed by the news, to not let that, dictate how you feel throughout your day. Because reading some of this news can be very... and going through it all day long, seeing, what we just covered, other stuff like, that's not going the way we would hope it would go, or seeing our country turn to socialism, seeing our economy and the value of our dollar plummet, seeing, people who are criminals and committing crimes getting off scot-free while the rest of us are working hard and trying to do what we can to stay afloat. We just can't be bogged down by the terrible news of the day, the bad news of the day. We have to be above that. So I said all that to say, as dark as some of these subjects are to cover, that's why it is great to have prayer and have the Bible and to be uplifted in the good news that we have to be able to go through, as well as while we cover the bad news that we go through. Because this stuff is hard to take in. It's hard to read on air. It's hard to research off air. And it can get to you if you let it. So never let it get to you if you can. Always remember that you do have tools and you do have the scripture to turn to if this stuff is getting to you, because this stuff is just disgusting. And Eric made a good point during the break. How does Amazon police maybe they're having a hard time policing these dolls. These dolls are not labeled as child sex dolls. So maybe they look at them and say, well, are these just, the way they come? And, I'm not sure how it all works there, but there could be a number of reasons why it took so long to have these items removed from the stores and from the shelves of the digital world. Or it could just be what it is. It was selling them and knew what it was and got exposed, so they took them down. We really don't know. We have not been able to dig down that deep. And who wants to? I mean, really, when you're talking about this stuff.
Look, I think we have to. But let's not spend any more time on that. We do have with us right now Tracy Beanz, one of my favorite investigative reporters, investigative journalists, investigators, period. I think she's got more on the ball than many investigators, licensed investigators in venues I know. And she's been right on the money with the majority of her information. And I'll tell you what, she's one of my favorite people. Tracy, thanks for joining us.
Hey guys, I'm so glad to be here. Oh my gosh, your studio is so beautiful. So beautiful.
Thanks. It's
built to myself.
Yeah, all credit goes to those who support us, and of course Eric the tech. He did a fantastic job. But Tracy, this is your kind of first time out here in our new arrangement with our affiliates pending and syndication pending. So we're so happy to have you. And you're speaking to an entirely new section of audience as well. So.
Well, hello, everyone. You're in a good place. Stick here. These guys are awesome.
Well, now let's get into the news of the week, of course, starting last Friday, the dropping of the Mueller report to Barr looking it over, issuing a 4-page summary this past weekend on Saturday, and then submitting it to Congress, and then the reaction of the leftist progressives saying, oh, no, man. Where do we start?
I mean, where it's, the social aspects of this are their own novel. You could spend hours and hours just talking about that and the media, the way the media handled it. They're in my opinion, in cahoots with the whole thing. So, but in terms of what it actually means in an investigative fashion, there were a bunch of really interesting things in there that I sort of focused on. So everybody's heard so much analysis on this thing, but one of the things that I haven't seen very many people speaking about was the line that Barr chose to include in the summary memo that basically read something to the effect of, despite numerous Russian-connected people attempting to work with the Trump campaign. In other words, Trump shoved off, and his affiliates and anyone associated, pushed off numerous attempts by Russian-connected individuals to try to work with him or them. To me, it kind of brought me back to the text that was found by an investigative researcher named Nick Falco back on Twitter, where it was about Oconus Lors, if you guys remember that.
No.
Wait a minute. Say that again. It was about. It was
Oconus Lors. So Peter Strzok.
Yes. I'm sorry. Yes. Go on.
Yeah, so I just thought of that immediately, and I said to myself, wait a second, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page were talking about using spies, in plural, from overseas in December of 2015. And reading that line in Mueller's report, I just kind of started to put two and two together and think to myself, hey, wait a second, maybe this is what he's talking about. Maybe this is what he uncovered. Because the Mueller investigation, say what you want about Mueller, has literally discredited the entire Steele dossier. Nobody can make an argument anymore that document is anything but nonsense. So when they were uncovering all this, what else did they find? And will we see some details on that? And, a lot of people also are just jumping to the Southern District of New York and saying, well, they're going to go after Trump. They're going to get him, Listen, the Southern District of New York may have an axe to grind in terms of the state government. But if you guys remember, in terms of the FBI there, they were really sort of thrown under the bus by McCabe and Loretta Lynch when it came to the Wiener laptop. So I wouldn't go just jumping to conclusions that anything coming out of the Southern District of New York in terms of FBI investigation is a witch hunt against Trump before you know more details. In addition, Gates was really never connected to Trump at all, and he hasn't been sentenced yet, and he's cooperating in other ongoing investigations. He was more in the Podesta Manafort sphere in terms of the lobbying contracts, and we're starting to see more of the Ukraine story trickle out into the media. So this is far from over, and I don't necessarily think that everybody hanging their hats from the other side on, the Justice Department in these different areas going after Trump directly should be doing that.
Okay, I'm trying to read between the lines into what you're saying. Maybe I shouldn't be doing that. Are you saying that there's more to come from Mueller? I don't want to be deliberately or seemingly obtuse about this.
No.
Okay. So, what's the takeaway here with this? Based on your investigative perspective here, the takeaway from the Mueller investigation, and you're right, by the way, going back to what you said earlier, what the focus should be. Hey, Donald Trump rebuffed these attempts at infiltration, and did so successfully. But okay, that's important for people to understand. But is there something else?
Well, was the government sending those attempts at the Trump campaign? I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I very strongly, I feel that that's the case completely. I think that the government was trying to set them up.
You called that early on.
Yeah. A lot of people did. I mean, it was obvious to anyone with brain cells in their head, really. Which we're starting to learn now is very few people, apparently. So what I'm basically saying is that in the summary report, Barr says that Mueller referred a lot of things out for prosecution, and that the left is sort of hanging their hats on the fact that these other prosecutions are going to be Trump related in terms of like them going after the Trump family or people connected to Trump. And I'm saying that might not be the case, and that we really need to wait and see what happens as this stuff rolls out.
Okay, because and that's kind of what made me stop and give pause, because earlier, in fact, I did a special 1 hour special on this. I was thinking they're going to take the fight to the state level, for example, or the federal level at perhaps like Southern District in New York for various issues, or other locations, as opposed to the special counsel investigation. They're going to, deep state is going to take on Donald Trump and his family and associates via the federal courts, and even perhaps the state courts, but specifically federal courts, and specifically in the Southern District of New York. But you're saying, well, maybe not, right?
Maybe not.
Okay.
Maybe not.
All right.
Yeah. The other thing I wanted to talk about with you guys today is John Brennan and his ilk.
Yes.
2 weeks ago, John Brennan was on television saying that Mueller was saving the last of these indictments of the Trump family for this Friday, and he didn't want to do it on the Ides of March because he didn't want the drama and, all this stuff. And, you don't just go on television and say things like that and tweet the way he's tweeted and be so brazen unless somebody's telling you that that's going to happen. I mean, think about the crow that he's had to eat from 2 weeks ago. He had to go on Scarborough's show the other day, I think it was yesterday, and basically say, well, I think I was wrong. My opinion on that has been, ever since that happened and ever since we got the Mueller report, somebody, whether willfully or, because they were being lied to, was feeding Brennan information. So somebody was out there feeding Brennan and others, probably Schiff too, this information that the whole entire Trump clan was going down, that there was all this proof of Russian collusion, that it was all over, that Brennan would use that, Comey would use that, Strzok would use that as their kind of basis of, oh yeah, they're going to get him. And then all of a sudden they were blindsided by the fact that there was no collusion found and he was completely exonerated in Mueller's report. To me, that means a couple different things. Number one, either Brennan was purposefully being fed disinformation so that he would look like a complete and utter fool and they could hang him up against the wall, or he was being fed disinformation by someone who thought they had good information and they were being set up to be sort of a leaker. Like the leaks are real, the news is fake type of a situation.
What are you leaning toward? I mean, I guess neither one has to be mutually exclusive, but what are you leaning toward? Are you leaning toward his sources giving fake information?
Yeah, I mean, I think that someone's setting Brennan up and like he's not connected anymore. Like these people are obviously shut out of what is actually happening. And I think that's a very good sign for us moving forward, that these people don't have good intelligence. They don't know what's going on. And I think that bodes well moving forward for what is good and right in the world.
So this is not... They're just assuming, hoping, and putting all this out there, being given tidbits of information by people that are inaccurate. And I just find that hard to believe, him being the head of the CIA and this whole conspiracy that concocted this Russia hoax going after President Trump, that in the end, just bad information and the inability to set up or create enough evidence against the president was the downfall of this investigation. I don't know.
No, I don't think it was the downfall of the investigation. Let me clarify, and I apologize. What I'm basically saying is that there has been some effort to continue to make the perpetrators behind this believe that they were going to take Trump down. And where that originated from, I don't know. But nobody, including Brennan, would sit on television and be so positive that the indictments were just around the corner for Donald Trump of that stature and be getting good information or just be thinking he could keep that charade going. It's too over the top. Like he literally just said that Trump's family was going to be indicted.
Yeah.
In a Friday, the Friday of the Mueller report coming out, he said all these indictments were going to drop on Trump's family. So why would you, 2 weeks before the Mueller report drops, go out on television saying all that if you didn't believe it? Like, what good is that going to do you? It's not like you still have a year to go and you can just string people along. They were right there at the very end. So he must have honestly believed that that was going to happen, not because there was any real basis for it, but because maybe he thought that the deep state, so to speak, was still in control and we're still going to pull some strings to make it happen. I think it blindsided them. And I think that they're looking at themselves, like he even had to come out and admit, well, I don't know that I got bad information.
Yeah.
I think I just made assumptions about it. And
where does that leave him and his credibility and people like James Comey and all these people who, put it on the line that President Trump was going to be taken out of office, that he was going to be found guilty to collude with Russia, that the information was there. And we know the news organizations don't have any credibility to lose, but how does this hurt Brennan? How does this hurt Comey in the long run?
I think they're scared right now because I think that accountability is around the corner. And, we've been talking about this for years now, guys, right? And it's been a frustrating journey to go through, like waiting for this to happen. And I talked about this morning on Twitter. basically, you're starting to hear the turnover now, like where everybody's starting to talk about, we have to figure out how this happened. We have to investigate A. We have to investigate B. It's time to figure out what really went down here. The dropping of the Mueller report was like the beginning of the next phase. Now there's no more, you're obstructing justice. If you do this, you can't do that because it'll look this way. And the public is basically primed now that there was no Russian collusion and something went wrong somewhere and we need to get to the bottom of it. Don't think for a second that these investigations haven't already been ongoing for years now, at least a year. Michael Horowitz is still investigating the FISA abuse. We've gotten some little dribbles out of that in terms of accountability and things that he's uncovered that have been going on. I think it was just the timing of this so that now people will feel like, mainstream America will feel like, oh my gosh, look, this investigation ran 3 months and now it's done. But in actuality, these things have been going on behind the scenes for a very long time and are probably nearing their completion.
What about the players, the 19 attorneys, part of Mueller's team and Mueller's team and the FBI agents? And, they're the same individuals, members of the deep state that were part and parcel to the contamination of the FBI and Department of Justice. And I guess will there from Horowitz be any positive, in at least in our view, positive, or will they be answering to anyone? I guess.
Yes, absolutely. There's no way that the airwaves are slammed ever since this, with everybody calling for accountability for the folks that perpetrated this ridiculous stain on our country, including the presidents of the United States, very forcefully. Every interview that Kellyanne Conway's done, every interview that the president's done, Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, everyone is saying, it's time. That's it. We have to figure out what happened here. No one's letting this go. That means not that we're going to start doing that now, just now it's okay to talk about it, in my opinion. And Huber, everybody says, well, he hasn't done anything and we haven't heard anything. And, yeah, but you haven't heard anything. And I'll stand by this again, because that's not how good investigations work. Like, Michael Avenatti was being investigated for financial crimes for over a year, and he probably had absolutely no idea that it was even going on. In terms of the 19 prosecutors and all that, I really think they took the team that was doing the Crossfire Hurricane operation and just migrated them over to the Mueller investigation. And then Mueller brought on those other,
right,
biased people. The reason why I say that is because Carl Gaddis was involved with the Mueller probe, and he was kind of one of the people involved with this Crossfire Hurricane investigation as well. And I don't know that all of those people, all of them, were corrupt. There could have been many of them that weren't. I do think it's interesting that there's still a couple more of these, charges that were given that need to kind of piddle out. I would be really interested to see what happens with Roger Stone. I think that it's amazing that Jerome Corsi was able to pull off what he did, and it's pretty interesting. And Rick Gates again, and Michael Flynn, General Flynn. Like, there's still more to go here, but there will be accountability for this. There is no question.
How does this affect the what is it, 80 plus House subpoenas that have been issued as part of the Russia probe? By the different committees? Are those going to continue to be ongoing? Those are separate from the Mueller investigation, obviously, but are we going to see a continuation of this investigation by the Democrats in the House?
This is going to be like a very weird answer for me, but I hope so. I hope they keep going, because every day that they keep this dragged out and keep on going, they bolster most of the American people after this are sitting there like, we've been lied to for years about what's going on here. And, some are too far gone, but a lot of people are going to start to say, okay, look, enough is enough already with this. This is ridiculous at this point. Like, why don't you guys focus on what's actually happening in the country instead of dragging out these investigations? And to be quite honest with you, what else could they possibly find? It's all for show. These committees have no prosecutorial power. That's why I always laugh when, it's like, oh, Huber didn't go to the committee hearing. So what? It's all a political show. Those hearings are a political show. And yeah, they can make criminal referrals, but they don't have any power to do anything in terms of prosecution. And the Republicans are in charge of the Senate. So there's really, let it keep going. Let them keep making fools of themselves.
How do you think William Barr, and I know this is kind of still early yet, given the fact that it was just Saturday that he received or Friday that he received the report, and then Saturday, based on public interest, he had to say something. So how do you think he's? You agree with what he had done with respect to the 4-page letter and saying, hey, we'll release it when we can or after or as appropriate? I mean, do you think what do you think of William Barr and his performance to date?
So, I mean, I'm impressed so far. He seems to be doing everything by the book. He even talked about the obstruction of justice, and it wasn't really necessary. I mean, obviously there was no obstruction of justice. He wasn't guilty of a crime. So how are you obstructing an investigation that you're not guilty? You know what I'm saying? So that whole thing, the Democrats are just counting on people being stupid and not doing any research for themselves on. But that was I think one of the most non-political things that Barr could have done is release that information from the Mueller report, because it did give the left fodder to go ahead and keep on going with this whole nonsense charade, but it also showed impartiality, and I think it was a wise move. I'm happy with it so far. In terms of releasing everything, it's got to be, the White House was so transparent throughout this entire investigation. Millions of pages of documents were provided. Think of the mess there's going to be to try to go through all of that, remove things that, like, you can't say, we interviewed Joe about his part in a bank robbery, and while we were interviewing him, we found out that he was having an affair with Felicia down the street, and so we interviewed Felicia, but Joe was innocent the whole time. You can't have that go out into the public sphere. And then they have to watch for leaking. Like, the left is inherently going to leak whatever they get out. So it's a precarious situation because they will destroy anyone they possibly can with this information, even if it has nothing to do with Russian collusion or whatever it is that they're investigating.
So what you're saying is like the fruit of the poisonous tree. A cop illegally searches a car and finds a pound of cocaine, but because he didn't have a search warrant, you had to throw out, whatever else he found in the car. You couldn't use the evidence that they found. So you're saying that because they investigated one crime and were looking for one thing, found another, they can't use that other thing to go after the people. Is that what you're saying? Am I not understanding correctly?
Yes and no. Not that particularly, but not like if there was evidence of another crime, they had to forward that. They can ignore another crime, right? But if somebody had something personally embarrassing and that person that was being interviewed wasn't guilty of anything, like had no part in this whatsoever, was just a witness in front of a grand jury, they can't release that information.
I see what you're saying now. Okay.
Especially with a grand jury.
Yeah.
Especially.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's why the report will remain.
Well,
redacted.
Absolutely 100%, or absolutely redacted when it comes to grand jury information.
Yeah.
Beyond that, well, it's going to depend on the sensitivity of the information. So I get that. Wow. All right. What questions aren't we asking that we should be asking, Tracy? Asking you, as a matter of fact.
I'm really excited about the FISA report from Horowitz, because I've been covering this little summary report that came out in January, where basically it's exposed that a contractor working for the government performed inherent governmental activities, which are things related to like counterterrorism investigations, things of that nature, maybe abusing a 702 database, maybe, doing things they shouldn't be doing. And that little snippet that came out of Horowitz lets me know that they're definitely onto something really massive in terms of FISA. And I don't think that Trump can declassify the FISA warrants until the FISA investigation is done. So I think that'll likely be done in tandem. And I think that all of this stuff starts to really roll before September, because it's my opinion, that the campaign of Donald J. Trump for re-election will really get going sometime in September, October, or somewhere around there.
I totally agree. Tracy, your website, your broadcast, tell us. Because, again, a lot of new people looking at this, we want to make sure you're properly introduced. So please take a moment and tell us about your website, where people can find you, and so on. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. It is really, really, really great to meet all of you new listeners. Again, the Hagmans are wonderful people, and I'm always blessed to be here. You guys can find my work at tracybeanz.com, TracyBeanz.com. You could also find all of my social media links on my website, so you can follow along with my work as I go.
And you have a radio program as well, right?
Yes, I do. I have the Dark to Light podcast with my co-host, Frank. the Dark to Light podcast with Frank and Beans that
Frank,
airs
I
every.
love that.
It airs every Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
That's fantastic. All right. Well, we only have just a few minutes left,
Yeah,
Joe.
the
I know
Smollett
you-
charges.
Just
A quick update here. The Chicago Police Superintendent Eddie Johnson, who was one of the most vocal critics of Smollett, saying he was going to, use him as an example. He's furious that the Smollett charges are being dropped, according to the latest report, and that's from a representative from the Chicago Police Department. What do you think about the Smollett charges being dropped, and how does this help anybody to see no justice being brought forward?
Couple things here I'll throw out really quick, and it's kind of information heavy. A couple days ago, the CPD said that they wanted an investigation into Fox, the woman who was responsible for dropping these charges today.
Okay.
They found text messages between Chen, who was Michelle Obama's former chief of staff when she was at the White House, and Fox, basically saying, can you do us a favor, and a family member of Jussie Smollett's, can you do us a favor and move this investigation to the FBI instead of letting the CPD handle it? And so Fox was attempting to try to move this investigation to the FBI's control rather than leave it in the control of the local department. And Jussie Smollett's relative was just thrilled about that. Fox recuses herself. Then we find out today that Fox is responsible for dropping all these charges. And Garagos, who was Jussie Smollett's attorney, who was also Claire Bronfman's attorney, was just indicted yesterday on charges of, embezzlement, along with Michael Avenatti. He was working in tandem with him. So there's a couple different schools of thought out here, one of which being that Jussie Smollett may have flipped and given up information on someone bigger. I don't know. They sealed the case, guys. That's why I lean towards that. Otherwise, this is a travesty, and the police department is furious about it, as you said. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot more to come from this. This isn't over. There's something going on here for sure.
If I can quickly share my belief, just for what it's worth, I do believe that Smollett had a handler, if you will, for lack of a better term, and I think that there's more of a conspiracy going on than just the Smollett case. But his actions, I think that he was directed to do something. I think there was bigger players involved here. That's my thoughts. I don't know.
I agree. No, I agree. And you don't forfeit $10,000 bond and, all that stuff if you're innocent. And they never said he was innocent of what he was charged with. They just said, we think this is good enough. He did community service 5 years ago, whatever they said. Chen, just so you know, is also the one who's been brought in by the Southern Poverty Law Center to now investigate the Southern Poverty Law Center's malfeasance that's going on inside. So there's a lot of interconnectedness.
Awesome.
All in the family, Tracy.
Tracy Beanz.
We love you. We do.
Love you too.
Tracy Beanz, I'll tell you what, one of our favorite people. God bless you. Thank you, Tracy.
Thank you, guys.
All right, folks, we're in right back. Network break. Tracy Beanz, check her out. Program description box going to contain all the information. Going to be right back. Stay with us.